Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Grajdek. I'm Dr. Martha Grajdek. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Ideally, when it's time to leave work for the day or for the week, you should be able to leave with your body as much as with your mind. Unfortunately, all too often, people leave their work physically but remain at the office or remain at work mentally and sometimes even emotionally. The problem with that is that when we leave work physically but not psychologically, we can't truly recover. In other words, recovery doesn't happen, at least not in a complete, full sense, if the body leaves but the mind stays behind. There is a way, however, to ensure that when you leave your job physically, whether that means working at the office or even working at home in a remote office, you leave in body and in mind. What that means is finding a way of detaching yourself from work psychologically and emotionally. And keep in mind that detachment is not the same as simply avoiding something. For example, when we truly detach from work, we leave it behind in the sense that we're not thinking about it, we're not ruminating about it, we're not planning for it. We are allowing ourselves a true break from work. Avoidance, on the other hand, may be something like reading an email, a work-related email, but not responding to it, or perhaps ignoring a phone call that's work-related, but still having the phone on and being aware of the phone call coming in. So avoidance isn't true detachment. There is a big difference between the two. What we're looking for is detachment. Just as you leave work physically, you have to leave your work in the same way psychologically. What are some things that could prevent you from detaching from work even after you leave the office? Sometimes it's just things that are on your mind, ruminating about things that happen, things that are going on, or things that are to come. Rumination is a big one. Some of you may find yourself thinking about unfinished tasks, things that you didn't manage to complete as you intended, or things that you will have to do the following day. Sometimes it's difficult for people to detach when they are in roles that include high level of responsibilities. In other instances, it may be vagueness or ambiguity in expectations that keep you stuck at work, at least with your mind. If you find yourself unable to leave work with your mind psychologically, even after you leave the office physically, consider which of these might be keeping you stuck at work. The good news is that there are things that you can intentionally and proactively do in order to help yourself detach from work psychologically. And whether this is an issue for you occasionally or every single day when you leave work, remember that engaging in specific practices designed to help you detach from work will take time and practice. The more you do, the better you will be at it. chances are that you feeling stuck psychologically at work, even after you left physically, isn't something that happened overnight. It's probably something that happened over time, maybe because of a specific job or specific project or a specific level of responsibilities. Whatever the case may be, the point is that it probably didn't happen instantly, but rather gradually over time. In the same way, when you start to engage in certain practices that I will suggest to you for being able to detach yourself from work psychologically, give it time. Go into it with the understanding that practice makes better, and only with time and practice will you be able to effectively leave work behind and not be stuck at the office psychologically after hours, during weekends and holidays. One of the simplest things that you can do is to practice some simple shutdown rituals. This may be as simple as turning off your work computer's monitor at the end of the day, right before you leave. Many of you leave your computers on, which is why I said monitors, but if you have the habit of turning off your computer, then do that. Once you shut off your monitor or your computer, understand that as a cue to your brain, to your body, to your mind, that this is the end of work mode. We are now switching into the next phase of the day, which is not work related. It's a very simple ritual, and it's something that you should pick. So maybe it's not shutting off the computer or the monitor for you. Maybe for you, there's another simple action that tells you you're done with work. For some of you, that may be something as simple as cleaning your coffee cup. It's the end of the day, you're leaving the space, you're cleaning your cup so that it's ready for the next workday. But right now, this represents a closing of this part of your day. Get into a habit of such simple practices that will allow you to pair that behavior with the expectation of that next phase or next step in your day. It's very simple, but it is a formal declaration for your brain, for your mind, and even for your body to say, we are done with this, which means we are moving on to the next. For some of you, a closing ritual may look a little bit different. It may be more work and task related. For example, you may assess how you did that day. What tasks did you intend to complete, and what did you actually do? And what do you have to do tomorrow? Organizing yourself, making a fresh to-do list, checking off things that you've completed, preparing for the next day may be just what you need in order to understand that the workday is coming to a close. When you think about these different rituals, this is about formalizing the closing of the workday. It makes it real, it makes it official. It's more than just leaving the space. It's closing out that part of the day. And for many, that is exactly what it takes in order to start transitioning not just the body out of that space, but also your mind out of that workspace. And remember, as I already said, practice makes better. The more consistent you are with these kind of transition practices, the more meaningful they will become and more effective. Another way of transitioning from work to non-work life may be not only by closing out the workday with some small ritual, some small behavior or gesture, but also opening up the next phase, the next step in your day. So making a concrete plan of where you're going and why, having something intentional, whether that's as simple as driving straight home or stopping to run errands or pick up the children or meet with friends, whatever the case may be. Closing out the workday and following that with opening up the next phase may be just what some of you need in order to let go and detach psychologically from the work environment and that work day. These little practices, these behaviors, rituals, whatever you want to call them, they don't have to be the same every day. They can be, but you can change them up. Do what works for you. Try them out. See what helps you to transition from work to non-work. And while I strongly encourage individuals to take responsibility for their own ability to transition from work to non-work, to leave work behind not only physically, but also psychologically and emotionally, there is a part that every organization plays in this as well. First and foremost, don't make it more difficult as an organization for individual employees to leave work behind. Once someone is done for the day, leave them alone. The organization has a responsibility to make sure that any deadlines, any requirements that it has of its employees are realistic. Don't push unrealistic expectations onto your employees so that they can't leave work behind once the workday is over. Make sure you have a realistic understanding of what is urgent and what emergencies are. There are far too many instances where an organization or a manager sees something as an emergency or as something very urgent when in reality it isn't. Urgency and emergencies are more real in places such as hospitals or the ER. And while I understand there are other industries and other companies or organizations that may have true emergencies or urgent matters, it's important to be realistic about that. Just because it seems urgent to one individual doesn't mean that it actually is. And if you are part of an industry or in a company where emergencies are real and are likely to happen from time to time, it is the company's responsibility to design its structure in such a way that there are dedicated people on call for just such situations. Being purely reactive can take a toll on your employees. As an organization, that's something you should avoid at all costs. Be prepared rather than reactive, and don't expect your employees to pick up the pieces every time you announce an emergency or an urgent situation. Those are the kinds of things that make it difficult for people to truly leave work behind and detach themselves psychologically and emotionally once they leave the office. It's important that organizations find clarity in what truly matters. And this clarity is not something that should be written in stone, but rather something that should be reevaluated on a regular basis. In addition to practicing certain behaviors or taking certain steps to help you transition from the workday to the non-workday, every individual should also focus on their general well-being. Things like getting enough sleep, actual quality sleep, is important. Pay attention to your mood. Make sure that you are able to regulate your mood and that your mood is in a good place more often than not. And finally, Think about long-term performance and your long-term happiness. Avoid knee-jerk reactions at work. Just like things should not always be an emergency or an urgent matter to your organization, the same goes for you. Make sure you're able to discern what a true emergency or even an urgent situation really is. Ambiguity or confusing or unclear expectations only add to the problem. So if you as an individual employee are unsure who's responsible for what and when, make sure to have a meaningful conversation with your employer. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. Leaving the office physically, but not being able to detach psychologically or emotionally, prevents us from truly recovering from the workday. This is why it's so important that each employee, each individual is able to truly detach from work at the end of the day. This is different than simply avoiding work. As an individual, pay attention to your own behavioral patterns, but also to your patterns of thinking and feeling. Do you find yourself stuck in rumination or thinking about work long after you have left the office? It's your responsibility to focus on proper self-care, from proper sleep and other forms of rest to effective mood regulation. Something else to consider is to start engaging in closing ritual behaviors that will help you to transition from work to non-work life. Remember that practice makes better, so practice these behaviors every day as a way of getting better at detaching yourself from your work environment. Once you leave the office physically, you should be able to leave it behind psychologically and emotionally as well. Organizations have a similar responsibility to their workforce. Allow people to truly detach from work by not having unrealistic deadlines or expectations, and by letting them leave work without reaching out to them after hours. If you are in an industry or a company where emergencies or urgent situations are a true possibility, make sure that you account for that by designing people who might be on call on some kind of rotating schedule to address these issues. Clear expectations allow people to truly detach from work, whereas ambiguity and confusion only make things worse. As the new week unfolds, I encourage you to consider how you detach from work, not only by leaving physically, but how do you detach psychologically and emotionally. I invite you to take what you've learned from this episode and start to practice some kind of transition behavior at least once a day. To start with, I suggest practicing transitioning the end of your workday into your personal lifetime after work. But you can do similar things when you just come into work. So you can transition in the morning from your personal life into your work day, and then at the end of your work day, you can transition from work to your personal life. Do this for 7 days and see how you're able to progress in your detachment from work. If one behavior doesn't seem to do it for you, try something else. None of this has to be written in stone. Keep it simple, keep it meaningful, but do it every day. You may also want to incorporate a 3-minute shutdown ritual at the end of your day before you go to bed. It could be something as simple as journaling or doing breathing exercises or a quick meditation that allows you to transition from a busy life, a busy day, into slumber where you can rest and regenerate. Give these a try and see how helpful they can be to you. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, Stress Free with Dr. G, where you can find the video version of the podcast. While you're there, check out some of the other videos. They focus on stress management. Stress Free with Dr. G is available on YouTube, and the link for that is in the description below. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.